I'll start with a couple of questions. Maybe the three of you who wrote the film could talk about this. I wanted to talk about how these characters originated. I know that this feature was developed from a short film, but could you say a little bit about where Donald and Pete come from? I think they're incredibly layered characters, and they seem like types that we've seen before. We've seen a lot of obnoxious man-child types in films, but the thing that you've done with Donald is to somehow made this character both weirder and more human, which I think is quite a remarkable achievement. And I think with Pete, we've seen a lot of these sort of straight man types, but I think it's a pretty complicated straight man figure. So maybe the three of you could talk about how these characters developed.
Yeah, well, Kyle had just a quick germ of an idea to be this guy, to get me and Jesse together and have these old friends meet up, and he wasn't going to give us any information about each other, and it was just going to be us sitting in a diner.
This is the origins of the short.
Yeah. So then I took that and I wrote a quick, short version, which looked a lot more like this movie. But I think, Donald started through a voice. I would leave these guys voicemails and be like, is this, over the top or what's the deal? And they approved it. And I think, as far as Donald goes, I mean, it's just kind of having sympathy or empathy for misfits and just, people that you are, quick to write off or whatever, and then just to, see that everyone's got their thing going on and just to feel for that person. And then, I mean, with Peter, the short was so brief that we weren't able to go too deep with him. And then doing the feature, we, it's nice to hear you say that. I mean, we purposely kept him kind of open and didn't want to, we had talked about him being an alcoholic or kind of these bigger arcs and things, but we just kind of wanted him to leave him open so everyone could kind of identify with that, but also obviously give him something. So, I mean, I feel like we were concerned, that he'd be too understated and stuff, but it was definitely a conscious, to keep him, not give him these big broad strokes or right? Does that make sense to you guys?
That makes sense.
Does that feel
That's
good?
how it went.
That feels
That's how it
good?
went.
That feels good? All right.
We also had Jesse and I are from small towns, and so it's I remember going back, and it's you see kind of people hanging out at the Pick and Pay. There was a specific guy I remember that was a rocker type guy, and he just had a bag of biscuits, and he came up to me, and I rolled down my window, and he was just going
Freddie
on and
Chanel.
on. Freddie Chanel, if you're out there. And he just kept going on and on about how the fire department wouldn't hire him. And just kind of he's like, how's your sister? It's just kind of droning on it. And it's we have our experiences with that, but it's Kris specifically, I think, was actually more in the Peter role as far as having guilt about people from the past and stuff like that. So we kind of brought all those different things.
It was just general high school experience, all kind of mixed tape.
How did the three of you know each other, and how did you come to work together?
We met in Berkeley in the early 2000s. Is it? Can you guys hear me? And started making work back then. We've been making shorts since then, so it's been 15 years kind of leading up to this, and certainly a lot of different kinds of films that are bad and good that got us here.
Kris had made a short film called Cardboard, and he was friends with somebody he was friends with. I saw it. I was it was kind of the same thing as Donald. It's dark humor. It's kind of ridiculous characters, but really grounded in reality. And I thought that was awesome. I was who is this guy? I got to meet this guy. We met, and we started working on stuff. Then we brought Jesse in the fold. He ended up being in sort of our first attempt at a feature. Then we all ended up going to the East Coast and kind of making stuff for off and on for years. And this was kind of finally the short. We got really good response from it and decided to make a feature.
Swan song.
Yeah. Swan song. Swan song's when you're done, though.
Well, that's what it felt like when we were doing it, trying to make it, that it was kind of the send-off to...
Yeah, do we want to keep doing this?
Yeah,
and it's and the response was really good, so we're yeah. So we decided to make the feature.
But we played with different genres, we tried out these different things, and then it was specifically all right, how can we make something that is doable? Something like the movies that we love, but we can do it ourselves at a minimal level, with people we certainly know, and that's what came from. That's what this was.
I think there's the really effective balance in the film between the humor and I guess the stuff that's not so funny, the darker, more painful side of the character backstories and all that. Did you feel like that balance was there on the page, or was it something that you had to were constantly looking for as you were shooting?
It was definitely on the page. I think the funny, like everything started from being funny. I mean, that felt like the easier part of the job was things being funny. It was adding the darker, more emotional stuff about being on the nose and over the top, and kind of so you'd have a scene. It's like, oh, we knew like the diner would be funny, but it was just where are we gonna kind of put these moments? So it was like, it kind of started with the comedy just kind of being in every scene, and then adding
And like
other
the more
stuff.
painful, the better. Like at one point, the big show, the finale was at like a party, and Chris, I remember Chris calling, being like, cancer benefit. It's like much more
Awkward.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about casting Louisa and Ted, since they're here with us? They're small roles, but I think they make quite an impression in their few scenes.
Yeah. Louisa, we met through Kyle, which was great because she was
Martin.
Kyle Martin.
Our
Kyle Martin.
producer,
Sorry,
Who should be up here.
Because we originally had like an older character, and she was a little bit younger, maybe than we had envisioned. But it was kind of her idea to be the like younger sister of somebody we went to school with. So that actually made more sense for his character to kind of be going after a younger sister. So I mean, Louisa really was into it, and yeah, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to
I
any
got to
of
do
that.
my own hair and makeup. That was super fun. I also chatted with Chris's wife over Skype because I wanted to sort of hear the dialect a little bit. So yeah, I tried to get that in there. That was
And the
fun.
energy.
And the energy, yeah, the energy. She's super rad. She was in the movie. Yeah, but this was my first time seeing it, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. I saw the short film, and I was like a complete fan. And then when I met these two for coffee, I was just like, oh my God, I really would love to work with you both. And I'm so glad I did, because that was amazing. Thanks, guys. Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you.
All of you.
And then this guy, it was when we were casting Ted's role. It was like, oh, you're kind of gonna do this wrestling. You're like a WWF wrestler, and he laughed, and I was like, oh, all right. He thought it was funny, and he did it, and we brought him back, and then I was looking. We casted him, and I thought he might look a little more dangerous without his mustache, so I wanted him to shave that. But that's your power. We didn't want to take that away. So we were looking online to see him without his mustache, and then we came across these bench pressing records, and then that he was actually in WWF and
He has
everything.
an action figure.
Yep. And so Ted was just I mean, he was just it was pretty obvious right off the bat. And I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was a trip. I went to Boston casting, and I've been in some stuff before, and even the audition, it was just so easy with these guys. But the big thing was the chemistry in the scenes. It was just so easy, and we just had a ball. Working an alter ego, which I used to do for a living. So, and everything was just, I don't know, it was just laid out nice. I mean, we did 2 or 3 days of filming, and you saw the snow. New England, Boston was the worst winter ever, so that just added to the effects of everything. Yeah, I was just so happy to be here and see everybody, and it's just unbelievable on the screen and the feedback we're getting. So these guys are great actors too. Yeah.
Kris, you want to say a bit about just the challenges of directing and acting, and not just acting, but like you're, as we can see, very much not Donald. So this switching in and out of character constantly, was it something? Or did you direct people in character?
No, That would have been nice. No, and I do sound more. If you hear me talk a lot, Donald definitely slips in there, unfortunately. No, it was difficult. I just feel like, the movie was set up to, I think, kind of, cater to that. But it was tough bouncing in and out, and it's not something I was, it wasn't great, just because you can't really give 100% to either or. But Kyle is kind of our handler, me and Jesse's handler in
He truly
life,
is.
with just getting on elevators and pretty much anything. So
Do another take.
he was there
was
to
not
kind of
good.
tell us, if our performance was shitty or, we weren't hitting it right. So he kind of served as
Sometimes
a
they
nice-
were very much on point most of the time, and like all these guys, it's like everything's very written, everything like that. But these guys could improv and stuff like that, and it's like we like to keep it loose and stuff like that. Kris and Jesse didn't need too many of my acting notes, but I did occasionally.
they were-
Just because Kris was like in the moment, sort of trying to juggle all these things.
And Kris, this is your hometown, or where you still live?
Yeah, this is where I grew
this
up.
is Warwick,
and I still reside. Yeah,
Rhode
Warwick,
Island.
Rhode Island.
Not a state often seen in cinema outside the films of the Farrelly brothers. Can you talk a bit about why you wanted to shoot there? And obviously the snow, as Ted was saying, I think the snow, the sheer amount of snow, really adds to the effect of the film in a way.
Yeah, the snow is amazing. I mean, that was so important. We had talked about shooting, somewhere else that maybe got snow more regularly, but we couldn't afford to do that. And so we really lucked out with the snow. But I mean, I've just grown up there, so it just felt like, obviously I've spent a lot of sad, depressing winters there and everything, so it just felt like a nice location to do that in. And yeah, it's not a place you see too often, so it's nice to kind of show, I like seeing little nooks and places like that in the country and stuff, so it was a good opportunity to kind of show that side, because obviously there's a lot of coast and like beautiful places, so it was nice to kind of go to the more, working class parts, which is where I've always lived and grown up. So yeah, and then the snow was just so wonderful that we just had it the entire time, and then we shot that when the scene we were smoking pot and everything. That scene happened. We shot. That was a reshoot we had to do. That was weeks later, and it was just in March and still dumping snow like that, and just fell like nice with how the weather was progressing in the movie and everything. So, we couldn't have been.
And like 2 weeks before we shot, I think there was 0 snow, and we were just like,
Yeah.
please, 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 because the short was all snow, and that was part of the aesthetic. So we really lucked out. And had we shot this year, it would have been so.
All right, let's take some questions from the audience. Yes. Where do you see the project going from here? Is that a question?
I mean, I think we would love it to play to as many people as possible. I'm not sure. Like,
Is that what you mean, like
Is
a
that what-
theatrical lease? Or yeah, no,
That's-
We just want people to see it.
yeah,
You know.
I mean, it would be nice, just to get as many people to see as possible.
A question is about the soundtrack. I think almost all 80s stuff, was it?
Yeah, I mean, the music's really tough. Music costs a lot of money. We knew that there was no score. The movie has always kind of rejected a score. So it made it more difficult because the songs, because it kind of feels more real. We wanted to make sure that the songs you're hearing are like radio songs and stuff at the benefit. So, I mean, it was just really what we could.
But that being said, we definitely kept it in the 80s. Like, it's
Right.
like we didn't put Rihanna in there.
It seemed like we could get the best stuff. It's harder to get contemporary, like
Yeah.
pop songs.
Yeah.
I mean, Rihanna, that type of Mambo Number 5 was in there. I mean, there was all these awful, great songs.
And we talked a lot about the 80s when we were writing it because we were thinking about high school, which was very much a part of this.
But money was really helped shape the music you're hearing.
Yeah. Question about financing.
I just met some people that really liked the short and really wanted to just connected to the material and really wanted to support the idea. It took like a year or so. I mean, a couple of years, just kind of plodding along with that.
Yeah, our producer, I mean, who isn't up here, but Kyle Martin, we just want to keep saying his name. He was amazing. And once we met him, the thing really lifted off. And that also helped with financing.
How many days was the shoot?
We shot 11 days and then 3 days for pickups and a reshoot.
How much improv was there?
Yeah, I mean, more than, I don't know. I mean, it's like there's stuff that I'm like, oh, did you improv that? And it's like, no, that was in the script. Or he's like, oh, that was funny. And was that in the script? Oh, yes, it was in the script. I feel like there's actually a lot more there, and it would just be me. It's like Kyle would be like, oh, you'll talk about being the renegade and, could Jesse being the renegade and stuff. And, we'd write a version of that. And then as I was kind of just throwing up all that crap, I'd add stuff. So, it was, I mean, it's all there, and like all the emotional moments and the blueprint and the dialogue is all very much there, but we go off,
People went off book for like things, it's like you can kind of, the dialogue was as such where you could kind of make it your own.
But we knew where it was going. I mean, it was very structured. We went back and forth on it, and the script took a long time to write. And so, yeah, all those scenes played out the way they did in the script, but the wording might not have been the same.
Yeah. I mean, it was, you're always making adjustments on the fly and stuff. And we had a very, like, collaborative group of, like Sam Fleischner shot the movie, and, and it was very collaborative, so we'd be there. And
people could toss out ideas
if
we were
would
doing
talk,
something, and be like, try this or try that.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I mean, it's like very important. I mean, I hope that doesn't ever come across, or that the intent is that, I mean, we care about this, this character very much. I mean, I feel so the opposite. I just feel like he just speaks his mind, and has no inhibition, and is just open, and that people get judged for that. And that's really where he came from for us. And I've never heard that before. I mean, people usually find, some people, there are a couple people that find him, awful to listen to or can't stand him. But for the most part, people seem to end up kind of sympathizing with him.
He was never supposed to be on any kind of spectrum or
No.
anything like that. It's like he's a goofy guy, and then if you watch the movie, you see that he knows a lot more that's going on than he's kind of on the surface.
And it was like people we knew in high school who didn't have a name on the spectrum. It's like my friend Dustin. It's like Freddie Chanel. It was like they were just kids we knew. There wasn't a name.
They're goofy guys. They're funny.
That was how he approached it.
I would say no.
No. Too much love. He just loves too much.
He doesn't take social cues, which, plenty of people don't,
Yeah, I mean, I think we would work together. The three of us would work together and work some of the major.
Kris wrote the script, but we were always consulting with the story. So it wasn't like, you write a scene. It was like, so that was on him, and he would be writing drafts, and we would, be like, maybe this needs to happen or that needs to. We would all consult on like but our taste is very much similar.
Yeah. Yeah, and we all bring very different things, so it ends up working out very nicely. Like, I connect with Jesse on particular stuff, especially because he's acting and his character, and then Kyle, so we all just kind of bring our thing to it, and so fortunately it's very smooth. Smooth operation.
Yep. Question about Kris's next project and whether you intend to work with the same collaborators.
No, I wouldn't want to start. I wouldn't want to be in it. I'd rather direct other actors and work with other actors. I think we'd like to keep it small, something where we could afford different kinds of music. But I think like the same crew and kind of the same environment. I think the environment is very important.
We all want to work together. I
mean, pretty much the same group of people. But we all have different ideas for things we want to do, and But for the next thing, it'd be nice just to like a step up, but to kind of hold on to that same working environment.
Yep, in the back we have time for a final question. The question is about the title of the film. I think there's actually a scene that explains it.
Yeah, he made me cry, past tense. yeah, I don't know, it just kind of stuck out, and it just seemed to, the sad clown kind of. I mean, it was one of those things where that it just kind of popped out and just seemed to make the most sense.
A lot of people missed that though. They're like, I think there was a review that was like, not a lot of waterworks in this, and it was like, no, it was described in the scene that he had made him cry.
Yeah, I think it just alludes to the majority of what the movie's about.
And what
with
he
all
did,
these-
what Peter did,
this shit
you
going
know.
on with these guys.
We're going to have to wrap it up, but I wanted to thank and congratulate all of you for being here.
Thank you very much for
Thank you,
coming.
thank you,
so
thank you.
much.